The prominent and pioneering Quiznos once had 5,000 restaurants. And then, before the founders knew it, they were filing for bankruptcy and had to deal with too many angry franchisees holding agreements they could not get out of. The problems were never about their famous sandwiches, though. That is what makes this story so harsh. It is worse and deeper. In 1981, a chef named Jimmy Lambatos opened a sandwich shop in Denver, Colorado. The concept was simple, and at the time, genuinely different. He toasted the bread. That was it. That was the whole idea. A hot sub with melted cheese and warm vegetables on bread that had been run through an oven conveyor belt until it had a crust. Subway was building an empire on cold cuts pressed into cold bread inside cold plastic cases. Lambatos was doing something that felt more like food and less like a transaction. His shop did well. He opened a second. He started selling franchises. And for a decade, Quiznos was exactly what it looked like. A good local idea slowly turning into a small regional chain. Then, in 1987, a 22-year-old named Rick Shaden walked into a Quiznos in Boulder, Colorado, overheard a customer say it was the best sandwich he had ever eaten, and decided he needed to own one. He opened a franchise that year with his father co-signing. Then another. Then a third. And in January 1991, at 26 years old, he bought the entire company. He had no background in running a national chain and no reason to slow down, which in the early 1990s in the fast food industry meant exactly one thing. He was going to franchise it everywhere as fast as he possibly could. What followed was one of the more remarkable expansion runs in American fast food history. Through the mid-1990s, Quiznos locations doubled, then doubled again. The toasted sub was not just a menu item, it was a differentiator, and in franchise pitches, that word does a lot of work. You are not just buying a sandwich shop, you are buying a sandwich shop that does something the other ones do not. By 2003, Quiznos had over 3,000 locations. By 2007, it was approaching 5,000. There were years in that stretch where they were opening close to 1,000 new stores annually. That number should make you nervous. It should have made someone nervous then. Here is the thing about franchising when it works. The franchisee makes money. They make enough money to pay their royalties, cover their costs, pay their staff, and have something left over that justifies having signed the agreement in the first place. The franchisor grows because franchisees are succeeding, and word gets around, and more people want in. That is the loop. That is how it is supposed to work. Quiznos broke the loop. Starting in the early 2000s, Quiznos required its franchisees to purchase nearly all of their supplies through a company-approved distributor. That distributor, which Quiznos had a financial relationship with, charged prices that were substantially above market rate. The bread, the meat, the sauces, the packaging, all of it priced at a margin that benefited the corporate structure and came directly out of what the franchisee had left at the end of the week. A Quiznos franchisee in Ohio or Oregon or anywhere else was not just paying royalties and marketing fees. They were being charged a premium on every ingredient they needed to open their doors in the morning, with no option to buy elsewhere. Franchisees started complaining. Then they started suing. By the middle of the 2000s, multiple lawsuits had been filed. A major class action eventually settled for roughly $95 million and covered nearly 7,000 franchisees. There are court documents from that period with franchisee testimonials that read less like business disputes and more like confessions about a mistake you cannot undo. People who had cashed out retirement accounts, sold homes, and leveraged everything they had to open a Quiznos were now being told, in effect, that the system they had bought into was designed to extract from them, regardless of whether they survived. And here is the detail that should have been on the front page of every business publication in America. Quiznos was closing stores faster than it was opening them while still selling new franchises. In 2007 and 2008, while the company was pitching expansion to new buyers, existing owners were shutting down by the hundreds. The number of open locations was declining. The pitch materials did not prominently feature that fact. Meanwhile, Subway kept growing. Quietly, methodically, with a model built around low overhead, franchisee profitability, and a footprint that fit inside a gas station if it had to. Subway understood something that Quiznos had decided to ignore. A franchise system is only as strong as the person running the smallest location in the least profitable market. If that person is failing, you are not growing. You are borrowing time. Then came the marketing. In 2004, Quiznos released a television campaign built around two small creatures that looked like they had been assembled from old carpet samples and bad decisions. They sang. They sang about Quiznos subs in a pitch that landed somewhere between a children's cartoon and a fever dream. They were called Spong Monkeys. The internet loved them. The campaign aired nationally during the Super Bowl. Within the first week, Quiznos corporate received more than 30,000 complaint calls. An Alabama franchisee put signs in his windows telling customers he was not responsible for the ads. There were reports that they were making children cry. The ads were strange enough that people remembered them, and not strange enough that people wanted to eat a sandwich afterward, which is, in marketing, about the worst outcome you can reach for. The campaign was pulled by the end of the year. Quiznos cycled through agency relationships and brand repositioning attempts for the next decade with the same result. Nothing stuck because the problem was not the message. The problem was the model, and no amount of television could fix a model that was grinding its own operators into the ground. By 2012, there were fewer than 2,500 locations left. By 2013, that number was falling fast enough that the word bankruptcy was no longer a hypothetical. In March 2014, Quiznos filed for Chapter 11 with approximately $570 million in debt. The filing took less time to process than it takes to toast a sub. The company emerged from bankruptcy within a few months. The debt was restructured. The corporate office continued. Most of the franchisees who had lost everything during the preceding decade did not emerge from anything. The count today is somewhere around 150 locations. It depends on the quarter and who is counting. Some estimates put it lower. The company has changed hands multiple times since the bankruptcy. There is a website. There are press releases every few years about a rebrand or a new ownership group or a technology partnership that is going to change the trajectory. The trajectory has not changed. The hard part of the Quiznos story is not that it collapsed. Plenty of fast food chains have collapsed. The hard part is what it cost on the way down. The franchisees who followed the rules, bought from the approved suppliers, paid the fees on time, did everything they were supposed to do, and lost anyway. A retired teacher in New Mexico who wanted to leave her school district job and own something. A veteran in Georgia who sank his separation pay into a location near a military base. People who read the franchise disclosure documents, spoke to their lawyers, believed what the numbers said, and were wrong not because they miscalculated, but because the system they were buying into was already broken and nobody told them. The toasted sub was a genuinely good idea. It still is. When Quiznos worked, it worked because the product was real and people liked it, and a good sandwich in the middle of the day is one of the more underrated small pleasures available to a person with $7.15. None of that was in dispute. The question was never whether the food was worth eating. The question was whether the business was worth building. And the answer, for too many people who gave too much to find out, was no. There are places in this country where people still remember walking into a Quiznos on a lunch break and getting a hot sandwich out of an oven and thinking that was exactly what they wanted. They are not wrong to remember it that way. The food did not fail them. Something else did. And that distinction is worth sitting with. even if sitting with it does not bring anything back.